Hey, Sister Ex-Morgan. It's me, Mr. Jensen, the Relief Society president. Just thought you might have forgotten already since you never come to church. Just thought I'd stop by and get you some treats, tell you how much we miss you, okay? Sister Ex-Morgan. Hey, I'm just here again to do my ministering, and I was just reading the silliest thing in here. Did you know that wickedness never was happiness? Or as I like to call it, not going to churchedness never was happiness? Hey, Sister Ex-Morgan. It's me again, Sister Jensen. We're still in church recently. And we'd just love for you to come. I was gonna come by and offer you a ride this Sunday. Since that's probably why you haven't been going, you didn't have a ride. Even though it's summer, the church is a block away, and Jesus walked up a bloody hill for your sins. Anyway, I just thought I'd invite you. You wanna come?
I really appreciate it. I'm sorry, it's just not for me. It's just...
I'm sorry, salvation just isn't for you?
No, I just don't believe in this church.
You ex-Mormons are all the same. You can leave the church, but you can't leave it alone.
They can leave the church, but they can't leave it alone. Guess what time it is, everyone? That's right. Fan mail time! Okay, you guys left the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We know she's TBM because she's using the whole freaking name. So did my mom. Her decision, right? But the difference between you guys and her, she didn't go on and on and on about it. You left. You're free. Whatever. Let it go. Stop wasting your time and energy and focus on being so negative and silly. Grow up and move on.
Okay, first of all, we actually go on and on and on and on about it. So, there's one area where you're wrong.
You say that she didn't go on and on and on about it. But here's the problem with that. You don't know. Of course she didn't go on and on and on about it to you, because that would be rude. We don't go on and on and on about it to Mormons. We talk about it with other ex-Mormons so that we can all have camaraderie. I'm sure all of my Mormon friends who know that I'm out think I don't go on and on and on about it. They have no idea what's going on the YouTubes, though.
Also, if it's a waste of time for us to go on and on and on about it, why are you watching us go on and on and on about it? We can flip the logic around on you.
When you decide to leave the Mormon church, everyone in Mormonism just expects you to do it so quietly. And they'll say stuff like this, or other things like, ex-Mormons are just bitter because it's covering up their guilt from knowing deep down that the church really is true.
That might be the case for me, but it's not that way for everyone.
Or I've heard people say, ex-Mormons who are avidly against the church are just proof to me that the church is true. I mean, if you're going to pick something to be proof, sure.
I think the fact that they want you to leave it quietly is less about you being quiet and more about them not hearing you.
Oh, gosh.
It's like everyone should watch Fargo. We just watched first season, and it's one of the best things I've ever seen. Anyway, Bob Odenkirk plays a fantastic character in that, who is a police chief who just doesn't want to hear bad things ever. So the main character is constantly trying to convince him, no, we got this wrong. This case is not the way you think it is. And then it's obvious, and she has evidence. And he's just like, nope. We have our easy answer. We're shutting down. I see that reaction a lot in the people who want you to leave quietly. The best way you can combat ideas you don't like, the only way is by exposing yourself to those ideas. You have to hear them. You gotta take conflict head on, or you're never gonna be able to fight conflict. And that's kind of just them trying to avoid that conflict of mind that knowing some of the things that drives people out of the church brings.
And just like Bill, most Mormons are just trying to avoid conflict in their own mind. And they're good people, they're nice people, but they just aren't willing to listen and to actually hear what you have to say. And I feel like it really just speaks to their own insecurities. When they're only willing to put forth very shallow reasons as to why someone would leave, they are just creating those assumptions in order to keep that safe space in their mind that there's no question. The church has to be true, so someone can only leave for a petty reason. I get so many comments from Mormons like, fine, you left, just get over it. And it just emphasizes that quote that we're going to talk about today. And it's they can leave the church, but they can't leave it alone. And even saying things like, you have your free agency, but you should not be talking about this stuff. And that already is super condescending, because when someone that's Mormon tells you, you have free agency, what they're saying is, you can choose to do wrong, but that doesn't make it okay, and that you shouldn't be encouraging other people to choose wrong. And it's like they can't even fathom the idea that from my perspective, I'm not choosing wrong. I'm trying to genuinely help people. I'm trying to preach truth, which is exactly what they're doing. But anyway, they cannot fathom why it is that you could not leave the church alone. They can't even fathom why you'd leave, but why can't you leave it alone? Well, we're going to talk about that. There are several reasons why, once you leave the church, it is really difficult to leave it alone. I was researching where that quote came from. The quote, you can leave the church, but you can't leave it alone. And I might be wrong, but the earliest I could find anything on it was from General Conference of 1988, and it was Glenn Pace. And he said this at that conference: it seems that history continues to teach us you can leave the church, but you can't leave it alone. The basic reason for this is simple. Once someone has received a witness of the Spirit and accepted it, he leaves neutral ground. One loses his testimony only by listening to the promptings of the evil one. And Satan's goal is not complete when that person leaves the church, but when he comes out in open rebellion against it. You know, that quote is almost believable just because it's so catchy. They can leave the church, but they can't leave it alone. I feel like I could make a song out of it, or like a poem.
Someone probably tried.
Put that wig back on, we'll do a music video. And, this whole notion, it's like he's setting it up that it's like if you have a spiritual experience, and the only way that you could ever come to the conclusion that the church isn't true is because Satan is leading you down that path. It's just this dichotomy of you got God or you got Satan. That's it. There's no other options.
And it makes sense within their framework that if this is, the one true church, what else would lead people away from it than evil, right? If God wants us here, and if it's good to be here, then anything leading us here is evil. And I understand that sort of thinking.
Right.
It's not particularly effective at getting the people that went over here to come back over here.
When you view this as the one true church, then it's supposed to be the one true church for everyone. And that's why it's so hard to imagine why it is someone could leave, because this church is supposed to be for everyone. All right, getting into our reasons, our reasonable reasons of why us sinner ex-Mormons cannot leave it alone. First reason, you feel like you were lied to. And because you feel like you were lied to, you kind of feel like other people should know that they might be lied to as well.
Part of it is that the church, somehow the church creates this army of tenacious salesmen for its cause. And then, on the other hand, are shocked that when those salesmen leave, they're still salesmen.
They're still tenacious salesmen.
Yeah, they're still, like, you make an army of missionaries, an army of zealous missionaries
for the truth,
who are trying to just drive their point of view home. When their point of view changes, it didn't change that they still want to drive their point of view home. They've just they believe a different thing now. So don't be shocked. You guilted people into becoming missionary, guilted people into inviting their friends who were annoyed with them to church, or giving Book of Mormons to random people. Don't be shocked when they then turn around and the CES letter is their new Book of Mormon, and they're writing it on bridges and whiteboards in churches and stuff like that. It's juvenile, but it's not shocking.
I've heard of people even, like, going to, like, the BYU libraries and, like, writing, like, read the CES letter, you could be free, and stuff like that in the books that people would, you know, borrow.
Yeah.
So that when they open them, they see that. Anyway.
They always do that in the Marriott hotels.
Are there Book of Mormons in there?
Have you never been in a Marriott hotel?
I mean, you would know. Have I been to a Marriott hotel?
You must not have. The guy that owns Marriott is Marriott. He's Mormon.
Oh, well, that is good to know.
And he puts Books of Mormon in your nightstand. And then he also sells you porn on pay-per-view.
What?
Have you ever been to a hotel?
Cut! Oh, man. We should send him the CES letter. Reason number 2. That we have a hard time leaving the church alone, and it's the stages of grief. When you leave the church, when you feel like all that truth has fallen off its pedestal, you are grieving. You are grieving the loss of your church, of your community, of these idols that you had your whole life. And part of the process of grief is that there's those 5 stages, right? There's, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance. A lot of those stages are going to involve a lot of talking about your thoughts and feelings, a lot of crying, a lot of needing validation and talking to other people about their thoughts and ideas. So yeah, when you're ex-Mormon, you're going to talk about it a lot. That's just kind of expected when your whole point of view shifts so dramatically.
I'd say they even go through the stages of grief again, because a lot of people, once they're done grieving the loss of their belief system, they then start grieving the life they feel was taken away from them.
Yes.
And that might, that might seem kind of dumb. Yeah, that's something you want to get out of. You don't want
to stay in that place mentally.
You don't want to sit there thinking, oh man, what would life have been like if I wasn't raised Mormon? Well,
you can't change it.
Yeah, it's
no.
So just deal with it and be fine. But that's a lot of people will go through that again. And that anger phase is a bitch.
Yeah. And honestly, it's very human to be angry at something like this when you've built your whole life around. We're going to get into that more, though. Reason number 3, everyone wants to downplay your struggle. That quote, "You can leave the church, but you can't leave it alone," is a great example of downplaying your struggle. A lot of Mormons do not have the ability to even see how much pain and suffering goes into making a decision like this. Mormons like to say that people who leave are just offended or lazy, and what they don't realize is the months or sometimes years of crying and suffering and confusion that goes into this kind of decision. Some people even realize that they may ruin their marriage if they tell their spouse that they believe differently. So when people are constantly downplaying your struggle, it makes you think, am I crazy? And then it makes you pump it back up even more.
If you haven't experienced it, it's kind of hard to, I guess,
understand.
fathom the struggle that is, because you have to go through a phase of pretty intense cognitive dissonance where, you hold on one hand, you hold a belief that, like, Joseph Smith is Jesus, the sequel. Not really, but
Jesus 2.0.
That Joseph Smith is this prophet that ushered in the new age. And no, he doesn't have to be perfect, but he's got to be at least kind of good. And then you also realize, you learn something new that, like, oh, he also burned down a printing press for printing, the truth about him practicing polygamy.
Allegedly, some people say that he was involved in that, but some people are in the comments are gonna be like, no, it wasn't him.
Anyway, you got these 2 beliefs, and you can't hold both of them. But this one's been there for a long time, and this one's very convincing, and one of them's got to win out. And but until then, while that battle between those 2 is raging on, your mind is being torn apart. It's
a bitch. Reason number 4. Your whole life and identity you built around this church for 20, 30, 40, maybe even more years. You built your life and who you are around that belief system. And you probably sacrificed a lot in the process. And then all of a sudden that falls apart and you're just supposed to quietly leave with no kind of rebellion. Well, you're really supposed to quietly stay, let's be real. Quietly stay. But you know.
What happens to your brain when your belief structure collapses is just utter chaos. You have this whole framework around which you've built the person that you are. Like, you didn't have to find the framework, it was given to you, but you had to build the person on top of it. And then all of a sudden, nobody feels like they've, hacked that framework to bits. Everybody feels like it's been swept out from under them. Mm-hmm. Like it's been taken from them. They have no choice but to abandon it because it seems flawed to them now. And when that framework for your belief structure, when it's just ripped out from under you, you're in chaos. When people are in chaos, they tend to panic and they can scream and they can even lash out at people that they love. That's what you want to avoid. You don't want to be a dick to your family members and friends that still believe in the church, but they've also kind of got to understand everything that you knew is in pieces and you're trying to reorganize it now on your own.
It's a very vulnerable time.
Generally, when your belief system collapses, your belief in belief systems themselves collapse. So you're not going to go find another one, usually. Most ex-Mormons don't. They don't usually go find somewhere else to build. They've got to build it themselves.
And that's hard work for those lazy ex-Mormons.
It's hard work, and it's utter chaos. Because determining morality as like a 35-year-old is hell. Building a person when you're supposed to have already done that is not fun, and it's terrifying. And so, yeah, people react poorly sometimes.
You look pretty good for 35,
As an example. I don't look very good for 27.
Oh, babe, I would hit that. The last reason I have for why it is ex-Mormons can't leave the church alone is because it often won't leave us alone. A lot of our friends, family, neighbors are all Mormon, and they all think we're crazy. And it's so difficult to be in that kind of environment where they're constantly guilt tripping, like, are you going to watch conference? Like, are you going to come to church? Are you going to do that? And again, I know that they're just trying to do good. It doesn't bother me. What bothers me is when Mormons are saying that we're the ones that can't leave it alone, when really a lot of times they're the ones that won't let us leave it alone. That's just frustrating.
I will say that sometimes ex-Mormons exaggerate that. They'll say something like, oh, that bitch came over and brought me fresh, hot brownies and a tub of ice cream.
I love having Mormon neighbors.
Yeah, Mormon neighbors are
so
great.
much treats. I swear around Christmas time, it was like every single night, at least one neighbor was over giving us something during the month of December. I don't have a problem with people doing nice things. I don't like this whole, like, well, you guys are the ones that are being ridiculous.
Well, and it's not just the people, it's the organization itself doesn't quite leave you alone. And that's just by default. That's just the way it's set up. It's set up to not leave you alone. You can't really leave it that quietly anyway. They want you to, but you can't because, like, okay, I'm done believing. Oh no, my sister's getting married at the temple in a month. Now I gotta have a conversation
with everyone
with my family
about my personal spiritual thoughts and feelings.
I mean, I didn't do that because I don't think you should have to, but it kind of sets it up in a way that
you have to.
Yeah, you have to. They notice. People will see I don't see a garment line on him anymore. And he's not, he didn't come to the family temple trip. He didn't show up to so-and-so's wedding and they waited outside the temple, or it
doesn't leave you alone.
The Mormon Church is very public. Your worthiness is public. It's just right there for everyone to see. So if you're struggling with something, like if you see a 13-year-old boy not take the sacrament, you're like, oh, he's watching porn. You see a 25-year-old guy doesn't go to his sister's wedding, so oh, he's drinking beer. Which, so what?
I could stop anytime.
Jesus drank Coors Light.
I'll say the one other way that the church doesn't leave you alone is in your own brain. Like, when you are raised with all of these limitations on the way to think, it's like your brain is going to be constantly stopping you from leaving it alone, because your brain is the one telling you, oh, like, you should feel guilty for showing your shoulders, you slut. And just, there's so much in your brain that's wired to think in a Mormon way that it's like, when you're trying to discover who you are as a person, all of a sudden unraveling that involves a lot of analysis about the church and why it is you think the way that you do. It's just all a process, and it's a painful process. It's a difficult one, but it's understandable why it is that you can't leave it alone, at least for some time, until you've got that healing and sorted out, and then you kind of move forward more,
Really, what it comes down to is I think that eventually most people do leave it alone once they leave. And once you get to that point, it's just great.
Yeah.
When the very first, because I could care less about Mormon stuff, honestly. I don't think about it often. I'll come on here and talk about it because you ask me to sometimes, but I remember, like, one of the first days I didn't listen to a Mormon Stories podcast, and it had been like a year, maybe a couple years of nonstop, and it gets exhausting. Mm-hmm. And I just, oh man, it felt good to just listen to music instead, and to one of the first times I ever just didn't even think about the church at all, and an entire day was amazing. It's like a weight off my shoulders. Oh, it's done. Mm-hmm. Finally done with this stuff. So honestly, I would encourage everybody to try to get to that point.
Yeah. That's the ultimate goal, is you do the healing you need to do, you talk about what you need to talk about, and then you just, you take those steps and then you move on. And that's just the beauty of this journey, I guess,
For everyone saying that they can leave the church but they can't leave it alone, it's like it's a new group of people every time.
Yeah.
Every couple years, it's just some new greeny ex-Mormons who are all feisty about it.
Should be like
did you know Joseph Smith was a polygamist?
And the rest of us are like, Joseph, oh yeah, that guy.
Oh my gosh. Shouldn't it be like reddy instead of like a greeny? Because it's like red is like hell. They're like fresh into hell.
Oh, Morgan.
Got him! See, we needed a joke to end the video with.
When are you gonna tell the joke?
Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I've appreciated all the support that you guys have given us so far. If you want to continue to support us, give this video a thumbs up and comment down below something about Mormonism or how much you liked this video. And I would appreciate it so much if you'd subscribe to our channel and share this video on everything. Everyone needs to know how funny we are and how ex-Mormon we are. Everyone needs to know, because we can't leave it alone until everyone knows. You can prove them all right by sharing this video. Thank you guys, and we'll see you in the next video.